All right, today I am working at a remote location, but as I promised, I would post something about how to deal with messaging in terms of the contacts that you've scraped. So the first thing we will do is we will have a recheck at something called the conversion formula. Then we will have a look at two ways to scrape more data and use n-gram analysis, and also a sandbox tool from IBM. Then we will go through the rest of the formula, which is about value proposition, incentive, friction, and what's the last one? Anxiety. We'll see how we'll do this. See you in a bit. Alright, so this is the conversion formula, and it looks a little bit more scary than it actually is. C stands for conversion. M stands for motivation, which is the stuff that we have within ourselves in order to actually want to convert in the first place. So this is something that is outside of the model. This is anything that comes from a need that we have. That motivates us to do a specific action that makes us, make a decision or convert to buying something, or, so it's the motivation that is underlying within ourselves. The second thing in the conversion formula is value proposition. That's all about what we believe that we get out of something. And if you have a good value proposition, then people are more likely than not to convert to doing something. The third thing is incentive, and incentive is all about how do you actually, why should you do this now rather than wait until later? So incentive is really important in order to make people not procrastinate. So if you know what people's motivations are, if you know what a good value proposition is, and if you have a good incentive, then you're in a good spot. A lot more people are likely to convert than if you didn't have those three things. If it's difficult to do this thing, meaning if you add friction to it, then less people will convert. And so friction is page load time, things like that. Anything that makes it more difficult than not so is actually adding friction to a task. And then the last thing, which is very important, it's anxiety, and it's anything that makes a person afraid of doing something, such as if they think that they will get socially shamed by sharing something, then they probably won't. If they think that they will become popular if they share it, then they will have less anxiety, and more people will share it. Or if they think that this shirt will give them people who will praise them, then they probably will buy that shirt more than if people will think that they're ugly. So all of that anxiety is building up within ourselves. So I'm going to give you some examples of how to actually use the web in order to extract these kinds of information. So let's get to doing that. In terms of motivation, so what you do is that you use the list of links that you've scraped, and instead of just scraping the contact details from them, you can scrape information from them. You can scrape a lot of all the content essentially that is on these pages. Once you have a set of content, meaning you have a lot of text material basically from these pages, and you want to find the motivation that drives these people, what you can do then is you can use two tools. One is a tool that is released by IBM, and it's called Personality Insights. And so I will post a link in the description of this video to that. And what you do is that you take a body of text, and my hypothesis here is that people who recommend products, they generally conform to each other's recommendations. So the compound personality of everyone who has written about a competitor of yours or about you, they form some kind of personality, that whole group, because they start conforming to each other and relating to each other. And so when you're analyzing a competitor, and you're looking at what people have been writing about, I usually do it the way that where I just scrape all the content from those pages. Then I take a portion of that content and I do a personality analysis on them, because that will actually give me a lot of information about the motivation. What are the drivers that drive this population? And so, just to take an example, I will take a text from my website, and here we go. So you just take the text like that, and then you paste it in here. You paste it in, and then you go and you analyze this. And what you'll find is that like this is a text from me, so my emotional range is quite high, which means that you probably should use some kind of emotional trigger. And you can see that my agreeableness is kind of low, which if you would trigger me with the proposition that a thing is some way or another, then I'm very likely to disagree by default. So I might, just try to, question whatever it is that you say, and just for the sake of it, just because that's how I work. And then I would try to find some facts to disprove whatever it is that you're saying. So my curiosity is high, my practicality is kind of high. So you use these kind of metrics to sort of figure out what kind of content should I use, what kind of mechanics should I use in order to convert them. And if someone has a high emotional range then and a low agreeableness, difficult word. What I would do then is that I would probably create a challenge of some sort, because this seems like a perfect person. You could build on value or like social causes and things like that, and I can trigger them with a challenge to save the world, to see if they're the best, or find the best argument or something like that. So this is one of the ways in which you can do that. You use scraping to collect a lot of text from a group of people. Then you analyze the compound personality of that group. Then you get a hypothesis of like what you should do. And then you test that hypothesis. Like, you think I will run a challenge and it will be this or that, or I will run a content campaign, I would run a participation campaign, I will write about human rights, or I will write about buy this right now. Whatever you decide based on what you see here, you will come up with some kind of conclusion, and that will be a hypothesis. What you do then is you test that hypothesis using dark posts on Facebook. So that way, because you have the emails to the people whose content you've scraped, the compound personality that you've analyzed, then you take a segment of those, like a few hundred of those, and you test whether or not you can generate a high click-through rate. If you can, then it's probably a good message to send to the whole group. That's at least a hypothesis, and it seems to work when we do it this way. So that's how you will come up with the motivation. With regards to like the subject line and how to get someone to open the text, then I would run another type of analysis, which is called an n-gram analysis. And so what I'll do is that I'll post this tool in the so what I'll do is that I'll post this link to this tool in the description here. So if you would take the same text that you took in the last example here, what an n-gram analysis does is that it actually analyzes how common different word combinations are in your texts. And I would use a trigram. You can read up more about what they're about, what the n-grams are about. But I would use a trigram, and I would try to find different kinds of words to this compound text that you've created. And I would analyze it to find some kind of common three-word phrase, and I would use that in my subject line, because that is something that is repeated a lot within this group of people, like a meme, something, and I would use that in my subject line just because I then know that this group recognizes that. And if they recognize it, they are much more likely to click it and open it. So that's what I would use for my subject line or for my headline in my ads. So that's also about messaging and how to come up with what messaging to use using some data. Now, in terms of value proposition, it's all about understanding what the currency is of the person that you're trying to contact. Now, some people like money, some people like a good offer, some people like getting invited to a club, some people, when you do these analyses, you take a few examples, you look at what the group seems to like, you look at some of their Instagram photos, what are they taking photos of, are they traveling, you try to figure out what is the cheapest currency you can use that they value the most. And then you offer them that in exchange for what you want them to do. So if it's a discount, offer them a discount. If it's travel and that's cheaper for you to buy a trip, and you would add a trip to your offer. If they value trips a lot, then you add a trip, then you add a trip, then you add a trip. One time we rented a club and we invited people to the club because that was cheaper than paying the people to do what we wanted them to do. So we use that as a currency. Come up with a currency, and that is your value proposition. And the mechanic there is you come up with a currency that the target values a lot, but that is cheap for you. That's your message. That's your what you're supposed to do there. In terms of incentive, it's all about offering exclusivity, and so whatever can make your offer exclusive, make it short in time, make it high value, whatever you can to make it like that. In terms of friction, in terms of lowering friction, use whatever is familiar. Don't try to reinvent things that people are using perfectly fine already. Do not put your videos on Vimeo. Put them on YouTube. People know how to share videos on YouTube. Don't send big nasty photos to people and expect them to share those photos. Rather put them in the content, and that will decrease the friction in order to share it, because they don't have to remake it. Prepare everything. So if you want them to brand their own photos within your material, then give them the templates for Photoshop and give them the filters for Instagram in order to easily be able to do that. So lower friction by understanding how you make something familiar to a person. And then in terms of the anxiety, you get your popularity. That's the easiest way to diminish or to lower anxiety, is to actually get your popularity numbers up. And if it's on YouTube, then buy a few views just to make your video not seem unpopular, like 10,000 or 15,000. Use AdWords because it's kind of cheap to do that. Get it up 15,000 views, then you will see that your share rate will go up, because more people will think that they will not be laughed at if they share this. Buy a few commentators, just to get it seeming as though this is something that is safe to comment on. All of that will bring up your metrics, and people will think that it's more popular, and then they will feel safe using it. Same goes with your products. Put those reviews up there, put the star rating up there. That eases anxiety, because it gives me the belief that I'm making an informed decision. Yeah, and that's how you remove anxiety. Figure out what people are scared of, then you take whatever metric you can online and you put that in front of them so that they don't feel unsafe when they make the decision. All right, so that was the tutorial for today. If you liked this, then you of course hit the thumbs up button. If you think someone might find this useful, then you take the link, you don't post it to Facebook, you just send it in an email to that friend, to that person that you really want their time to be wasted, or whatever purpose you find for sending this video to someone. But yeah, send it in a meaningful manner, because otherwise it would just be spam. So do that, and have a good day!